Hello, how are you? I'm so glad you're here. Today, I thought we'd talk a wee bit about the idea of acceptance and how that fits into the pain reprocessing and mind-body approach. So, if you look around, a lot of things that are written around chronic pain and chronic symptoms, then often things will talk about acceptance. Um, and I think that largely comes from the fact that when you're dealing with most health professionals in relation to persistent and chronic symptoms, then they talk about managing symptoms, talk about learning to live with them and how to live well with pain, how to live well with different problems, fatigue, and all these kind of things. So it's how to live well with what you've got. So there's an element of accepting where you are and accepting that that's what you've got. That's your your lot in life. That's a hand you've been dealt. So accepting this is your how your symptoms are going to be, and then trying to live your life round about that. And those of you who've been following me for a wee while will know that we're not really going to agree with that at all. We're not going to say this is how it has to be. We're saying, well, you don't have to accept that's how life is, and you don't have to accept that these are your symptoms, and that's your lot in life, and that's how things are going to be for you on an ongoing basis. We're saying that actually, when serious pathology has been ruled out, in most cases, chronic and persistent symptoms can be resolved using a pain reprocessing therapy approach. And that is because we know that most chronic and persistent symptoms are due not to structural damage, but actually due to the misinterpretation of the signals and the way they're processed by the brain and the nervous system. And we also know that the brain and nervous system is malleable and can relearn, and therefore the symptoms can dramatically improve and resolve. So acceptance isn't really what we're about. But neither are we about fighting. So the tends to be the two kind of schools of thought of the acceptance. This is how it is, live and work your world round about your symptoms. And there's the push on through, don't give in, don't be defeated, ignore the pain, ignore the symptoms, carry on regardless, and face it with anger and confront it, and that sort of attitude of, that kind of confrontational attitude as well. And neither of us saying that's how best to approach things, because the problem with that attitude is that the brain perceives that as there being something to fight in. So that ups the ante around fear and danger, and it often produces even more symptoms because it's got to keep you safe, because quite clearly you're not listening and actually fighting it. So firstly, it means there's something to fight, and secondly, you're not listening to the symptoms it's already given you. So it ups the ante and it tends to increase symptoms even more. Plus, it's also not a very nice way to live your life when you're constantly fighting something. And it's probably not very good for your general health to be in that kind of state of aggression and struggling on through all the time. So neither of us saying you should be fighting and battling against your symptoms either. What the sort of terminology I would prefer to use is to acknowledge the symptoms that you have. So we're not accepting them, and then we're not saying this is how it's going to be. We're not fighting them and saying this is, I'm not going to be defeated, I'm going to show you. We're acknowledging that they're there. So yeah, okay, I can feel my facial pain coming on. I can feel that sensation of the facial pain. I'm acknowledging that it's there. I understand why it's there. I know it's because of my brain misinterpreting the signals it's receiving, and that's okay. And I'm going to do some calming techniques to help reduce the sensitivity of my nervous system, and all the time reassuring myself that I know that all is well, and acknowledging that the symptoms are there and I understand why. So you're not accepting that this is how it's got to be. You're not making a trade-off saying, oh, well, if my facial pain gets better, then I don't mind if I still have IBS, or if my IBS goes away, then I'm quite happy if my leg pain continues. Or, it's not about making a trade-off either, saying, oh, a barter for getting rid of one than the other. All these symptoms are, for the most part, due to the misinterpretation of the sensations, and therefore they're all amenable to resolution. So you don't have to accept that's how things are going to be. And if you think it's not that bad, if you think, oh, actually, do you know, it's okay if I have to live like that. That's all right. Flip it to the way that I often use for whenever people think things aren't that bad, or things they've gone through aren't that traumatic or challenging. Would you say if it was someone you really cared about, so your child, your partner, best friends, parent, whoever, someone that you really care for, if they were going through what you were going through, if they were experiencing your symptoms, would you say, oh, well, that's all right. You can put up with that, can't you? You just need to accept that's how things are going to be. That's all right. It's not, don't be like fuss about it, it's fine. Would you actually be saying that? Would you think that's okay to the person you care most about in the world? Or would you say, that's really, that's really rotten that you're having to do with that? It's not right. You have to put up with that. And I think probably the latter is the case. Because again, as we always say, we're far more compassionate towards others than we are to ourselves. And when we've lived with symptoms for a long time, we do, to an extent, come to accept them. We come to get used to it, as awful as they may be. There is an element of, it becomes the norm, doesn't it? And a lot of people do come to accept on a level that's how things have to be. And the possibility of not having them there is so far beyond what they can imagine, that there is an element of acceptance and resignation to that's how things just have to be. So I would encourage you to try and flip that a wee bit, and we like to flip things on their head or pivot on them, and say, well, actually, no, I'm not accepting that. I'm acknowledging that it's there. I'm understanding why it's there. I'm giving myself the kindness and compassion to recognise that. And I'm acknowledging that it's a temporary thing and that it can improve, and that I can take steps to move on from these symptoms, and it doesn't have to be how things are. So I'm not battling it, I'm not going to war with it, but neither am I accepting that that's how it's going to be. I'm acknowledging it's there in the moment for now, but I'm also recognising and telling myself I understand why it's there. It's due to the misinterpretation of the signals, and that I can do things to help resolve these symptoms. Okay, so that was just a wee chat around acceptance. I think that's quite a big topic that comes up round about chronic and persistent symptoms, and it's just to say it doesn't have to be a case of acceptance. It's more a case of acknowledgement, and then thinking how we can help the brain and the nervous system relearn to let these symptoms go. Okay, so I'll leave you at that for now, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.